The sun hadn't even peeked over the horizon when Maya's phone buzzed with an urgent message from her supervisor. Still wrapped in her blanket, she squinted at the bright screen. Emergency replacement needed. Premium flight. Singapore to Dubai. Report in 90 minutes. Her heart skipped a beat. This wasn't just any flight. It was aboard one of those ultra-luxury private jets that usually carried celebrities and business tycoons. Maya had barely slept 4 hours after finishing her previous flight, but she knew opportunities like this didn't come often. As a contract flight attendant, every high-profile flight could mean a step closer to a permanent position. She jumped out of bed, nearly tripping over her cat who was demanding breakfast. "Not now, Pepper," she mumbled, rushing to the bathroom. Her reflection showed dark circles under her eyes, and her long black hair was a mess. The clock was ticking. She had mastered the art of the quick transformation. 15 minutes for a shower, 10 for makeup, and 5 for pulling her hair into a perfect bun. No time for breakfast, a coffee would have to do. Racing through her tiny apartment, Maya gathered her pristine uniform, which thankfully she'd ironed the night before. Her hands trembled slightly as she fastened each button of her navy blazer. This wasn't like the commercial flights she usually worked on. Private jets meant handling the most demanding clients with the highest expectations. The taxi ride to the airport was a blur of mental preparations. Maya scrolled through the flight manifest on her phone, trying to memorize every detail about the service protocols for premium clients. Her supervisor had mentioned that someone very important would be on board, but the passenger list was surprisingly brief. At the airport, Maya's heels clicked rapidly against the polished floor as she made her way through security. The other flight attendants were already there, going through their pre-flight checks. She could feel their eyes on her, the last-minute replacement, the outsider. Some of them had been flying these luxury routes for years, and here she was, the newbie, about to serve alongside them. "You must be the fill-in," said a senior attendant, looking Maya up and down with a slight frown. "Lisa's down with food poisoning. Hope you're up to speed on our premium service standards." Maya nodded confidently, even though her stomach was doing flips. "Absolutely. I've reviewed all the protocols." The lie felt necessary. She'd only skimmed them during the taxi ride, but how different could they be? The answer came quickly as she began the pre-flight preparations. Everything was on another level. The china wasn't just fine. It was hand-painted and worth more than her monthly rent. The coffee wasn't just coffee. It was some rare blend that cost hundreds per pound. Even the hand towels in the bathroom were monogrammed with gold thread. Time was running short, and Maya's hands shook slightly as she arranged the crystal glasses in the galley. She'd been so focused on memorizing names and protocols that she'd forgotten to grab that much-needed coffee. Her eyes felt heavy, and the lack of sleep was catching up with her. 10 minutes to boarding, announced the lead attendant, making Maya's heart race even faster. She double-checked everything. Cabin temperature, fresh flowers in the vases, magazines arranged perfectly, individual welcome cards placed just so. The tiniest detail could make or break her reputation on this flight. A slight autumn drizzle had begun outside, making the private terminal's windows blur. Maya watched as a line of luxury cars pulled up, their dark windows hiding the VIP passengers within. This was it, her chance to prove herself in the world of elite aviation. She took a deep breath, straightened her shoulders, and put on her most welcoming smile. What she didn't know was that this ordinary morning was about to turn into the most extraordinary day of her career, starting with a passenger in worn jeans who would step aboard last. A man who held her future in his hands, though neither of them knew it yet. The last passenger to board the luxury jet wasn't what Maya expected at all. While other passengers had arrived in designer suits and carrying expensive briefcases, this man walked in wearing faded jeans, an old gray t-shirt, and carrying a worn laptop bag. He could have easily passed for someone who'd wandered onto the wrong plane. "Good morning, sir," Maya greeted him with the same warm smile she'd given the others. though she wondered if he might be someone's assistant. His salt and pepper hair was slightly messy, like he just rolled out of bed, and his sneakers had definitely seen better days. What Maya didn't know was that this casual figure was Dev Wright, the 42-year-old owner of Elite Wings Aviation. He'd built his private jet company from scratch, turning it into one of Asia's most prestigious luxury carriers. Today, he decided to fly as a regular passenger, something he did twice a year to check on service quality, though only a handful of senior staff knew about this habit. The other passengers, mostly regular clients, recognized him immediately. A few raised their eyebrows at his casual appearance, while others nodded respectfully or pretended not to notice. Dev liked it this way. It let him observe how his staff treated different types of passengers. Maya showed him to his seat, noting how he politely declined her offer to take his laptop bag. "I've got it, thanks," he said with a kind smile that reached his eyes. Unlike some of the other passengers who had barely acknowledged her existence, he actually looked at her when speaking. "Would you like anything before takeoff, sir?" Maya asked, trying to give him the same premium service despite his casual appearance. She believed in treating everyone equally, regardless of how they dressed. "Just water for now, thank you," he replied, pulling out his laptop. Maya noticed it wasn't the latest model, another surprise on a flight where most passengers carried the newest tech gadgets. As Maya went about her pre-flight duties, she overheard snippets of conversation from other passengers. A woman in an expensive business suit was complaining about the weather to her colleague. A young tech entrepreneur was loudly discussing his latest startup. But the man in the t-shirt sat quietly, typing away on his laptop, occasionally glancing around the cabin with an observant eye. What intrigued Maya most was how the other crew members reacted to him. Some seemed to be avoiding his section entirely, while others appeared oddly nervous when passing by. She couldn't figure out why. He seemed like the least demanding passenger on board. The flight captain's voice came over the intercom, announcing their departure. As Maya checked that all seats were in the upright position, she noticed the man in jeans helping an elderly passenger store her handbag in the overhead compartment, something most VIP passengers would never do. Just before takeoff, Maya saw him pull out a small notebook and start making notes. She wondered if he might be a journalist or maybe a mystery shopper hired to evaluate the service. Either way, she decided to keep providing her best service. After all, that's what she believed in, regardless of who she was serving. Little did Maya know that her genuine approach to service hadn't gone unnoticed. Dev had already made several notes about her professional yet warm demeanor. In a world where luxury often meant stiff formality, her authentic style was refreshing. As the plane began to taxi, Maya felt more relaxed about the mysterious passenger. There was something genuine about him that made her job easier. No airs, no demands, just simple politeness. She had no idea that this seemingly ordinary passenger would soon turn her world upside down, and that the real test of her professional skills was yet to come. The engines roared to life, and as the plane lifted off the runway, Maya couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to this flight than met the eye. She was right, but not in any way she could have imagined. The flight had been smooth for the first hour. Maya was just starting the premium coffee service, carefully preparing the expensive Brazilian roast that cost more than her daily wage. The aroma filled the cabin as she expertly handled the fine china cups, each one worth hundreds of dollars. "Watch the turbulence," the captain's voice crackled through her earpiece. Maya nodded to herself, feeling confident about handling a few bumps. She'd served through worse conditions on commercial flights. The cart was perfectly organized, cream, sugar, and those little chocolate biscuits that came from some fancy French bakery. The first few passengers received their coffee without incident. Maya was actually starting to enjoy herself, falling into a comfortable rhythm. Some passengers barely looked up from their phones, while others gave polite nods. Then she reached the man in the casual t-shirt, who was deeply focused on his laptop screen. That's when the plane hit an air pocket. It happened in slow motion, at least in Maya's mind. The sudden drop made her lose her balance. The coffee pot tilted. She tried to catch it, but physics had other plans. A wave of hot coffee arced through the air like a brown waterfall. Oh no, no, no. Maya watched in horror as the liquid splashed across the man's lap and expensive laptop. The coffee pot clattered onto the fold-out table, miraculously not breaking but adding to the growing puddle. The cabin went silent. Even the chatty tech entrepreneur stopped mid-sentence. Maya could hear her own heartbeat pounding in her ears. Coffee dripped from the table onto the cream-colored carpet, forming a growing stain that probably cost more to clean than her monthly rent. I am so sorry. Maya grabbed napkins from the cart, her hands shaking. Please, let me help. She dabbed at the spill, trying to prevent the coffee from spreading further across his laptop. The man's reaction wasn't what she expected. Instead of yelling or demanding compensation, he quickly saved his work and closed the laptop, moving it away from the spill. Hey, it's okay, he said calmly. These things happen. Maya could feel other passengers watching the scene unfold. A few were whispering among themselves, and she caught fragments of their conversation. Can't believe she spilled on. Owns the whole fleet. Going to be in trouble. But she was too focused on damage control to process what they were saying. Sir, please let me get you something for the burn. We have a first aid kit. Maya's professional training kicked in, pushing aside her panic. The man checked his leg where the coffee had landed. Just a bit warm, nothing serious. Though I can't say the same for my jeans. He actually smiled, which only made Maya feel worse. I'll pay for the cleaning, Maya offered quickly, though she had no idea how she'd afford it. And your laptop. I'm so sorry if it's damaged. Her voice cracked slightly. This could cost her not just this job, but her entire career in luxury aviation. A female passenger 2 rows back muttered something about incompetent staff, loud enough for everyone to hear. Maya felt her cheeks burn with embarrassment, but she kept focused on helping the man clean up. Really? It's fine, he insisted, helping her mop up the spill. Though I think my laptop might need a coffee break of its own. He actually chuckled at his own joke, surprising Maya even more. The lead flight attendant appeared, having heard the commotion. Her face went pale when she saw who was covered in coffee, though Maya still hadn't caught on to why everyone was acting so strangely. Sir, I'm so sorry for this incident, the lead attendant began, but the man waved her off. No harm done. Accidents happen, he said firmly. Though I wouldn't mind a change of clothes from my bag in the hold, if possible. Maya spent the next few minutes cleaning every drop of coffee she could find, her mind racing with worry about the consequences. She had no idea that this mishap would lead to something completely unexpected, or that the calm man in coffee-stained jeans had already made a decision that would change her life. In the aftermath of the coffee incident, Maya's hands wouldn't stop shaking. She retreated to the galley to prepare fresh towels and a new shirt that the lead attendant had found in the man's luggage. Her mind kept replaying the moment, the splash, the gasps, the whispers. But what stuck with her most was how the passenger had handled it. While she waited for him to return from changing in the bathroom, Maya prepared a fresh cup of coffee exactly as he requested earlier. Black, no sugar. It was the least she could do. She chose a different cup this time, handling it like it was made of thin glass. You know, I actually needed an excuse to change out of those jeans anyway. His voice came from behind her, making her jump slightly. He changed into a simple blue button-down shirt and dark trousers, looking more like the typical private jet passenger now, but still with that same kind smile. Sir, I cannot apologize enough. Maya started, but he held up a hand to stop her. Let's make a deal, he said, accepting the fresh coffee. You stop apologizing, and I'll tell you about the time I accidentally sent an entire shipment of jets to the wrong country. His eyes twinkled with amusement. Maya couldn't help but smile, though her anxiety hadn't fully subsided. "You work with private jets, sir?" she asked, trying to make polite conversation while secretly wondering about her job security. "You could say that," he replied, taking a sip of the coffee. "Actually, this is excellent. Perfect temperature." His compliment seemed genuine, not just an attempt to make her feel better. What happened next surprised Maya even more. Instead of returning to his seat, the man, Dev, leaned against the galley counter and started chatting with her. He asked about her experience in aviation, listened intently to her stories about different flights, and shared some of his own travel adventures. "What made you choose this career?" he asked, showing real interest in her answer. Maya found herself opening up. "I love making people feel cared for," she explained. "Even on their worst days, a genuine smile and kind word can make a difference. It's not just about serving drinks. It's about creating moments of comfort when people are far from home." Dev nodded thoughtfully. "That's exactly what this industry needs more of. People who see beyond the luxury to the human element." As they talked, Maya noticed something odd. Other crew members kept walking past the galley, finding excuses to peek in. Some gave her worried looks, others seemed confused. One nearly dropped a tray when Dev waved hello. "I've worked plenty of VIP flights," Maya continued, still oblivious to Dev's true identity. "But this route is special. These planes are beautiful. Whoever owns them must really care about quality." Dev nearly choked on his coffee, covering it with a cough. "You think so? What would you change if you could?" Without hesitation, Maya shared her thoughts. "Well, the service manual is too rigid. It focuses so much on protocol that we sometimes forget these are real people we're serving. I'd add more flexibility, maybe personalization options." She stopped, realizing she might be overstepping. "Sorry, I tend to get carried away when it comes to improving service." "Never apologize for having good ideas," Dev said firmly. "Actually, I'd love to hear more. What else would you change?" For the next few minutes, Maya found herself sharing her vision for better training programs, improved communication between crew members, and little touches that could make flights more memorable. Dev asked thoughtful questions, challenged some points, and nodded approvingly at others. The lead attendant appeared again, looking anxious. "Sir, we'll be starting our descent soon." "Of course," Dev smiled. "Thank you for the coffee and the conversation, Maya. Both were enlightening." He paused before adding, "Oh, and about your ideas. I think we should discuss them in more detail after we land." As he walked back to his seat, Maya caught the lead attendant staring at her with a mix of shock and something else, respect. She couldn't understand why everyone was acting so strangely. It was just a nice conversation with a friendly passenger who happened to work in aviation. Little did she know, she just spent the last hour giving the owner of the company an impromptu presentation on how to improve his business. And he loved every minute of it. The plane was about 2 hours from Dubai when Maya's world turned upside down. She was restocking napkins in the rear galley, still feeling good about her conversation with the kind passenger in now changed clothes, when she overheard two businessmen talking in the nearby seats. "Can't believe she doesn't know who he is," one whispered, not quietly enough. "Spilling coffee on Dev Wright himself. That's either the bravest or most clueless thing I've ever seen." Maya froze, a stack of napkins suspended in midair. Dev Wright. The name rang a bell, but surely it couldn't be. "Owner of Elite Wings Aviation," the other man continued. "Built the company from nothing. Now he owns this entire fleet and about 50 other private jets." The napkins slipped from Maya's hands, scattering across the floor like confetti. Her legs felt weak, and she had to grip the counter to steady herself. The man she'd spilled coffee on, the one whose expensive laptop she probably ruined, the one she'd just spent an hour chatting with about how to improve his company, was her boss's boss's boss. Memories from the last few hours flashed through her mind. Her casual conversation with him, her confident suggestions about improving his company's service manual, even that moment when she told him the owner must really care about quality, while talking to the owner himself. No, 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 she whispered to herself, crouching to gather the fallen napkins. Her hands were shaking so badly she could barely pick them up. The lead attendant found her there, still on her knees, looking pale as a ghost. "Are you okay?" she asked, then saw Maya's expression. "You finally figured it out, didn't you?" Maya looked up at her, eyes wide. "Why didn't anyone tell me?" The lead attendant helped her up with a sympathetic smile. "He never wants us to. Does this twice a year. Flies as a regular passenger to check on service standards. Most of the regular crew knows, but since you were a last-minute replacement." Maya slumped against the galley wall. "I told him his own service manual was too rigid. I practically lectured him about his own company." She covered her face with her hands, remembering every detail of their conversation with fresh horror. "If it helps," the lead attendant said, trying not to laugh. "I've never seen him spend that much time talking to a crew member before, and he seemed genuinely interested in what you were saying." But Maya was already pulling out her phone, opening her email app. "I should write my resignation now. It's more professional than waiting to be fired, right?" "For what?" the lead attendant asked, making suggestions he asked for. "Being honest? Or for treating him like a human being instead of sucking up to him once you knew who he was, which you didn't?" Maya paused, fingers hovering over her phone screen. Put that way, it didn't sound quite so bad. Still, but the coffee, his laptop. The laptop that he immediately said was fine. The coffee that he laughed about. The lead attendant shook her head. "Trust me, if he was upset, we'd know. I've seen him fire people before. They never got a personal chat about improving the company." Just then, they hit a patch of turbulence. Maya instinctively grabbed for the nearest handhold, having flashbacks to the coffee incident. From her position, she could see Dev in his seat, still working on his apparently not ruined laptop. He looked up, caught her eye, and gave her a friendly wave. Maya managed a weak wave back, her face burning red. She watched as he returned to his work, apparently completely unbothered by the fact that his coffee-spilling employee had spent an hour unknowingly critiquing his business. "What do I do now?" she whispered to the lead attendant. "Your job," came the simple reply. "We've still got 2 hours to Dubai, and something tells me your day isn't over yet." Maya took a deep breath, straightened her uniform, and tried to compose herself. She had no idea that Dev Wright was already drafting an email about her, one that would change everything. But for now, she had a job to finish, even if every time she walked past his seat, she felt her cheeks flush with embarrassment all over again. For the remaining 2 hours of the flight, Maya moved through the cabin like a nervous ghost. Every time she passed Dev's seat, she felt her heart do a little jump. The resignation letter on her phone kept calling to her. She'd written and rewritten it at least 6 times during her brief breaks. The Dubai skyline was now visible through the windows, its tall buildings piercing the desert haze. Maya tried to focus on her landing preparations, but her mind kept replaying every single word she'd said to Dev. Had she really told the owner of Elite Wings Aviation that his own training program needed a complete overhaul? "Landing in 20 minutes, the captain announced over the intercom. Maya began her final cabin check, collecting empty glasses and ensuring all seats were upright. When she reached Dev's row, he was still typing on his laptop. "Sir," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, "we're preparing for landing." He looked up with that same friendly smile, apparently oblivious to her distress. "Already? Time flies when you're having fun, doesn't it?" Was he making fun of her? She couldn't tell. Back in the galley, Maya's hands trembled as she secured the service cart. The lead attendant watched her with growing concern. "You need to breathe," she whispered. "You're starting to look like you've seen a ghost." I might as well have, Maya replied, checking her uniform in the small mirror for the 100th time. Do you know what happens to contract workers who spill coffee on the company owner and then tell him everything wrong with his business? The lead attendant smiled knowingly. No, but I have a feeling we're about to find out. As the plane touched down in Dubai, Maya's phone buzzed. Her heart nearly stopped. It was an email from HR. With shaking fingers, she opened it. Please remain on board after passenger departure for a brief meeting. That was it. No explanation, no hint of what was coming. Maya felt sick to her stomach. She'd heard stories about how private aviation companies could blacklist problematic employees. Would she ever work in luxury aviation again? The passengers began gathering their belongings as the plane taxied to its private terminal. Maya forced herself to maintain her professional smile, thanking each one as they departed. Dev was one of the last to leave, pausing at the door. Thank you for an interesting flight, he said, looking directly at her. Was that amusement in his eyes? Oh, and Maya, don't go anywhere just yet. He walked off before she could respond. The lead attendant touched her shoulder gently. Whatever happens, you handled yourself well today. Not many people would have stayed so professional after realizing. She trailed off as an HR representative boarded the plane. Maya, please come with me to the terminal's conference room, the HR rep said, her face unreadable. Mr. Wright would like to speak with you. Maya followed, her legs feeling like jelly. The walk through the terminal felt like a march to her own career execution. She clutched her phone with the draft resignation letter, wondering if she should just send it now and get it over with. The conference room was empty when they arrived. Please wait here, the HR rep said, leaving her alone with her thoughts. Through the glass walls, Maya could see the Dubai heat creating waves in the air above the tarmac. She wondered if she should start looking for jobs in a completely different industry. Maybe a nice, quiet bookstore where she couldn't spill things on important people. The door opened, and Dev walked in, now wearing a proper business jacket over his clean shirt. The transformation was striking. Suddenly, he looked every bit the company owner he was. Maya stood up so quickly she nearly knocked over her chair. Please sit down, he said, taking a seat across from her. We need to talk about your future with Elite Wings Aviation. Maya sat, her heart pounding so loud she was sure he could hear it. She had no idea that the next few minutes would completely change the course of her career, but not in the way she was expecting. Maya sat in the conference room, trying not to fidget with her uniform buttons as Dev settled into his chair. The room felt too big and too small at the same time. Outside, a private jet took off, its engines roaring like her nervous heartbeat. First, Dev began, placing his coffee-stained laptop on the table. Let's talk about what happened on the flight. Maya's stomach dropped, but before she could launch into another apology, he continued, You treated me exactly the same way you treated every other passenger. Do you know how rare that is? Maya blinked, confused. This wasn't how firing conversations usually started. Most people either ignore me completely when they don't know who I am, or they become unbearably fake once they find out, Dev explained, leaning back in his chair. You were genuine throughout, even after the coffee incident. About that, sir, Maya started, but Dev waved her off. The laptop's fine. It's seen worse. But what happened after was fascinating. He pulled out a small notebook, the same one she'd seen him writing in during the flight. You turned what could have been a disaster into an opportunity to show real leadership. You stayed professional, focused on solutions, and most importantly, you showed genuine care. Maya's mind was spinning. Was she being praised for spilling coffee? But what really caught my attention, Dev continued, flipping through his notes, was our conversation about improving the company. Those ideas you shared, they were exactly what we've been missing. He pushed a document across the table. Maya glanced down and saw her own words, neatly typed up, suggestions about personalizing service improving crew training, making the manual more flexible. "Sir, I'm so sorry if I overstepped," she began, but Dev cut her off again. "Overstepped? Maya, you did exactly what I've been trying to get my senior staff to do for years. Think about our passengers as real people, not just wealthy clients. You understand something they don't. Luxury isn't just about expensive coffee and fine china. It's about making people feel valued." He stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the Dubai skyline. "Do you know why I do these undercover flights?" Maya shook her head. "Because reports and statistics don't tell me how our crew really treats people. They don't show me who has that natural ability to make everyone feel special." He turned back to face her. "You have that ability, Maya. Even when you thought you'd ruined your career by spilling coffee on me, you still cared more about my comfort than your job security." The door opened, and the HR representative returned with more papers. Maya's heart started racing again. "So," Dev said, sitting back down, "I have a proposition for you. We're creating a new position. Head of Customer Experience Training. The person in this role will redesign our entire approach to customer service, train new crew members, and implement all those excellent ideas you shared with me, plus any others you have." Maya sat there, stunned. "And you want me to help find someone for this role?" Dev laughed, a genuine, warm laugh. "No, Maya, I want you to take the role." The HR representative slid a contract across the table. Maya stared at it, trying to process what was happening. The salary figure made her eyes widen. "But I'm just a contract flight attendant," she stammered. "No," Dev corrected her. "You're someone who understands what real luxury service means. Someone who treats people with respect regardless of who they are or what they're wearing. Someone who has the courage to tell the company owner his service manual needs work without even knowing he's the owner." He pushed the contract closer to her. "The coffee incident. That showed me who you really are under pressure. And our conversation showed me who you could be with the right opportunity." He paused, smiling. "So, what do you say?" Maya looked at the contract, then at Dev, then back at the contract. Her hands were shaking again, but for a completely different reason now. Sometimes the worst moments in life turned out to be the best opportunities in disguise, even if they came with a side of spilled coffee. 3 days later, Maya stood in front of her bathroom mirror, adjusting her new business suit. Gone was the flight attendant uniform she'd worn for years. Instead, she wore a navy blue blazer with the Elite Wings Aviation Executive Badge. The woman in the reflection looked different, confident, professional, but her hands still shook slightly as she fixed her hair. Her phone buzzed with messages from her old crew members. Word had spread fast about her promotion, creating a mix of reactions. Some sent heartfelt congratulations, while others couldn't believe the coffee spilling incident had led to this. The lead attendant from that fateful flight had become her biggest supporter, sending a message that read, "See? I told you everything happens for a reason." Maya arrived at Elite Wings Aviation's Dubai headquarters, a gleaming glass building that touched the sky. The security guard checked her new ID card, doing a double take at her title, Head of Customer Experience Training. Just last week, she would have entered through the crew entrance at the back. "Good morning, Ms. Maya," the receptionist greeted her with a smile that held a hint of curiosity. Everyone wanted to know the story behind her rapid rise from contract flight attendant to executive team member. The rumors had grown wilder with each retelling. Some said she'd saved Dev Wright's life during terrible turbulence. Her new office overlooked the airport runway. Maya stood at the window, watching private jets take off and land. One of those planes had changed her life just 3 days ago. Her desk still had unpacked boxes, but one item was already in place. A small coffee cup, turned into a pencil holder. Dev had given it to her as a joke, saying, "Let's keep this one upright." A knock at her door interrupted her thoughts. It was time for her first meeting, presenting her ideas to the senior management team. The same people who had written the rigid service manual she criticized were now waiting to hear her plans for changing it. Walking into the conference room felt like entering another world. 10 pairs of eyes turned to look at her, senior executives in expensive suits, each with years more experience than her. Dev sat at the head of the table, giving her an encouraging nod. "Good morning," Maya began, her voice steadier than she felt. 3 days ago, I was serving coffee on one of our jets. Today, I'm here to talk about transforming our approach to luxury service. She saw a few raised eyebrows, some skeptical looks. But Maya thought about all the passengers she'd served over the years, the ones who needed kindness more than perfectly arranged magazines or precisely measured coffee portions. Luxury isn't just about expensive things, she continued, gaining confidence. It's about making people feel valued. Let me tell you about a passenger I once had. She launched into a story about a nervous first-time flyer she'd comforted on a stormy flight, drawing laughs and nods of understanding. As she presented her ideas for personalized service training, mentorship programs, and flexible guidelines that focused on genuine human connection, Maya saw the skeptical looks transform into interest. Even the most traditional executives were taking notes. Dev watched from his seat, a proud smile on his face. He'd seen something in her that day on the plane. Not just in how she'd handled the coffee spill, but in how she treated everyone with equal respect and dignity. After the meeting, an older executive approached her. "I've been doing this for 20 years, he said, "but I've never thought about it quite the way you presented it. Sometimes we need fresh eyes to see what's been missing." Back in her office, Maya collapsed into her chair, relieved and excited. Her phone buzzed with a message from Dev. "Great job." They didn't even notice their coffee cups were half empty. She laughed out loud. Her new boss had a sense of humor after all. Looking out at the runway again, Maya spotted another private jet landing. Somewhere on that plane, a flight attendant was probably worried about making mistakes or spilling coffee. Soon, Maya would help them understand what she'd learned in the most unexpected way. Sometimes the biggest opportunities come disguised as our worst moments. 6 months later, Maya stood before a class of new flight attendant trainees in Elite Wings Aviation's training center. The room buzzed with nervous energy as 20 fresh faces looked up at her, their uniforms still crisp and new. "Before we start today's training," Maya began, picking up a coffee pot, "let me tell you a story about the day I thought I'd ruined my career." A few trainees exchanged curious glances as she continued. "It involved this very coffee pot, a passenger in worn jeans, and the most embarrassing moment of my life." The room filled with gentle laughter as Maya acted out the infamous coffee spill, using water instead of actual coffee. "I thought it was the end," she said, setting down the pot. Instead, it turned out to be just the beginning. Her training programs had become legendary within the company. Unlike the old rigid system, Maya's approach focused on real situations and genuine human connections. Today's session was about handling unexpected situations, something she knew quite a bit about. "You see," she continued, walking between the rows of seats, "luxury isn't about perfection. It's about how you handle imperfection. It's about seeing the person behind the passenger." A young trainee raised her hand. "But what if we make a mistake with a VIP client?" Maya smiled, remembering her own panic from that day. "Let me tell you what our CEO taught me. Every passenger deserves VIP treatment, whether they're wearing designer suits or worn jeans. Sometimes the most important person on the plane might not look like what you expect." The training room itself reflected Maya's new philosophy. Gone were the rigid rows of seats and memorization drills. Instead, she'd created a space that looked like an actual private jet cabin, where trainees could practice real situations. On one wall hung a framed coffee-stained laptop case, a gift from Dev on her first work anniversary. "Your most challenging moment might become your biggest opportunity," she told the class. But only if you stay true to yourself and treat everyone with genuine care. During the practical exercises, Maya watched as her trainees practiced handling difficult situations. She created scenarios based on real experiences, including her own. The coffee spill incident had become a favorite training example, though the story got a little grander each time it was retold through the company. Dev occasionally dropped by these training sessions unannounced, sometimes still in his casual clothes. It always amused Maya to watch new trainees slowly realize who the observer in the back of the room actually was. Today was one of those days. "Remember," Maya said, noticing Dev slip quietly into the back of the room, "our passengers aren't just paying for a flight. They're trusting us with their comfort, their safety, and sometimes their dignity. How we make them feel is just as important as any service we provide." After class, the trainees filed out, chatting excitedly about their lessons. Dev approached Maya's desk, picking up the famous coffee pot. "Still using this as a teaching tool, I see." "Best lesson I ever learned," Maya replied with a grin. "Though I still prefer to serve water during demonstrations." "Smart choice," Dev laughed. "By the way, customer satisfaction scores are up 40% since you started your program. The board is impressed." Maya organized her training materials, feeling proud but humble. It's amazing what happens when we focused on the human side of luxury service. Looking out the training room window at a line of gleaming private jets, Maya thought about how much had changed in 6 months. The nervous flight attendant who'd spilled coffee was now transforming how one of the world's top private aviation companies approached customer service. "You know what the best part is?" she said to Dev. "Every time I train a new group, I get to turn my biggest mistake into someone else's learning opportunity. And somewhere out there, a flight attendant who's having a rough day might remember my story and know that spilled coffee isn't the end of the world. Sometimes it's just the universe brewing up something better." Dev headed for the door, but paused. "Ready for tomorrow's flight?" Maya nodded. Once a month, she still worked as a flight attendant, her own rule to stay connected to the real experience. "Just promise me one thing," she called after him. "Wear something coffee-colored this time." Their laughter echoed down the hallway, a reminder that sometimes the best success stories start with a simple mistake and a whole lot of heart.